Right Honorable Speaker and members, you have been presented with a 69 trillion proposed budget, which of course all of you know will keep rising up to the final day of appropriation. Revenue correction is projected at 40 trillion, and the rest of the money, 28 trillion, will be borrowed from domestic and external sources. So the proposal to borrow is captured on page 23 of the framework paper. The amount to be borrowed is nearly 40% of the budget. So if you approve the budget framework paper, which essentially is a draft budget, it means you have authorized the government to borrow the sums captured in the draft. Minister of Finance, the mover of this motion, is warning you that by approving the budget framework paper, you are actually authorizing them to breach the law. Their warning is captured on page 26 of the framework paper. This is what they are saying. For instance, the share of the public debt to GDP is projected to surpass the 50% target for the financial year 2025-26. And the ratio of domestic debt interest payment total revenue is also projected to exceed 12.5% benchmark. Additionally, the targets on fiscal deficit and revenue growth are also likely to be missed. The reason these rules exist is to ensure the country's macroeconomic stability. This is like a hump in a road whose aim is to physically stop reckless drivers from overspeeding. The law wants to stop NRM government from reckless spending. Right Honorable Speaker and members, you therefore cannot proceed with this framework paper unless the Public Finance Management Act and the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility is amended, or both. And it is not only us, Parliament, who are required to adhere to the law. Section 5 of the PFMA says, Cabinet shall, in making decisions with implications on public finances or in determining, formulating, and implementing government policies, as well as in performing any other functions conferred on it by this or any other act, adhere to the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility and other requirements. Section 6 provides circumstances under which we may deviate from the objectives in the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility. They include a natural disaster, an unanticipated severe economic shock, or any other significant and unforeseen event that cannot be funded from the contingency fund. This is done with the approval of Parliament. Right Honorable Speaker, I am asking, is Parliament being given the right GDP figures? Schedule 3 of the Public Finance Management Act sets out areas the framework paper or the draft budget must address. One of these areas, the average and year-end gross domestic product figures. Sharing the right GDP figures with Parliament is a legal requirement. Just to refresh the mind of honorable members, GDP means the monetary value of goods and services produced in the year. It is these goods and services that we will tax to raise revenue to finance the budget. You must therefore have the right GDP figures at all times to determine how much borrowing are you going to authorize and the right revenue correction projection. In the framework paper, the GDP figure is not explicitly stated. The gross domestic product is stated in the budget framework paper on page 15 as 251 trillion, 68. Even that's what the minister said. That increase from 202 trillion in the last year budget framework paper. In his written submission to the budget committee dated January 20th, the Minister of State for General Duties, the Honorable Musasi, states on page 2 that GDP is estimated to grow, just estimated to grow to 251 trillion. The GDP figure given by the Honorable Musasi is just a forecast. The Uganda Bureau of Statistics puts the GDP at 226 trillion as of last year. And when you calculate the debt to GDP ratio of 51 given on page 20 of the budget framework paper, it gives you 226 trillion as Uganda's GDP, which is 63 billion US dollar. It is therefore wrong for finance to give 251 trillion, which is a forecast, as the GDP figure. There is always a desire by the NRM leaders to exaggerate the country's growth, which is the reason they recalculate the GDP unnecessarily. Conflicting public debt figures. The Minister of Finance gives total public debt figure as 116 trillion, which is 32 billion US dollar on page 20. This finance says is an increase from 94.7 trillion, which is 26 billion, translating into a debt to GDP ratio of 51%. This debt to GDP figure is calculated using the UBOS 226 trillion, what they give in the budget framework paper, as the true GDP figures. Just for emphasis, the stock of public debt is 116 trillion and GDP is 226. Those are the figures that finance is using. However, the Bank of Uganda, in its December 2025 State of the Economy report on page 10, puts public debt at 124 trillion, translating into a 54.8 debt to GDP ratio. You can see the trick here. You lower the figure of public debt and exaggerate GDP to present a lower GDP to a lower debt to GDP ratio. Then you ask Parliament to authorize more borrowing on the pretext of a sustained public debt stock. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, public debt is plunging Uganda into a crisis. The NRM government plans to borrow over 18.5 trillion from the domestic market, commercial banks, to finance the budget. The 8.9 trillion will be new loans to finance the budget and 9.6 trillion to roll over maturing debt. The central bank is concerned with the domestic debt to private sector credit. By overborrowing from commercial banks, the NRM government is crowding out the private sector. The concern of Bank of Uganda is captured on page 10 of their December State of the Economy. If you look at the private credit now, I think it's about 21 trillion, and government is borrowing sometimes up to 19 trillion. So you are competing with the citizens that you want to empower. You remove all the money, they have nothing. Our borrowing from commercial banks starves the private sector, which is employing more than 85% of the population. Ratio of interest to revenue correction. One of the fiscal rules in the Charter for Fiscal Responsibility is reduction of total domestic debt interest payment to revenue, excluding grants, to 12.5%. The government plans to spend 28.6 trillion on debt servicing next financial year, of which 12.7 trillion is interest payment. The interest payment for the domestic debt is 10.7 trillion, which is 26.7% of the projected 40 trillion revenue correction. The target is 12, but you are going to pay interest of 26. And this matter is a matter of law. The rule in the Charter for Fiscal Responsibility is reduction of interest payment on domestic debt 12.5% of revenue. But the budget framework paper interest payment will instead raise to 26. I hope Parliament will resist this. The Minister of Finance also agrees that such an elevated debt service burden shrinks fiscal space, leaving fewer resources available for discretionary spending in high multiplier growth enhancing sectors. And the committee noted that proposals in the budget framework paper offend even common sense. If you look at page 19 of the budget framework paper, the NRM government, the minister is praising here, wants to borrow from external sources 10 trillion to finance various projects. Certainly that will increase our debt stock as a country and will violate the rules we set ourselves out in the Charter for Fiscal Responsibility. The question is, have we utilized the numerous loans we have contracted to finance various projects for us to contract more? The answer is a big no. And I want to thank the Minister of Finance. They have been very generous with information. If you read the July 2025 report on the performance of externally funded projects, you will know why you have remained poor. You also know the dangers of employing old people in critical offices, knowing their biological inadequacies. When people grow old, every part of the body slows naturally. Even the thinking slows down. They begin to think in installments. Many of the projects for which we have borrowed cross sums of money are either behind schedule or have completely stagnated. And here we are being asked to recklessly approve further borrowing. I now turn to the Minister of Finance report. on externally funded projects. The Ministry of Finance has been monitoring performance of these projects and done some reports. The latest report samples 66 externally funded projects, as the table below illustrates. We have borrowed money to finance projects. Even in this budget, they are saying we should borrow another 10 trillion. But look, the table. The projects in the agro-industrialization, 7 projects here, only 2 have been completed. 1 is on track, others behind schedule. Digital transformation, 2, 1 on track. Human capital development, 14 projects, only 1 completed, 1 on track, 12 are behind schedule. Integrated transport infrastructure and services, 12 projects for which we have borrowed money, only 2 completed, 1 on track, 18 behind schedule. I don't need to go, but the total below is that you have a total here of 66 projects sampled by finance. Only 6 are completed, 5 on track, 55 of these projects are behind schedule, including ones that you will see that have stagnated. And I'll give a list here. I'll be very brief because this is not my list. It is a list of Honorable Musasi. Kampala-Jinja Expressway. We borrowed money to do this road. And I will go to the last line. This is how finance has assessed this. The physical progress of the project is 0. Money borrowed, progress is 0. They are saying, let us borrow more. That's what is in the budget framework paper. Busega Mpigi Expressway. Construction is at 46%. This road was supposed to have been completed years ago. They are at 46%. Part of the reason you will see, they are saying they don't have counter funding. And then they are saying, let us borrow and begin more projects. That's why I said you even offend common sense. In Entebbe Airport rehabilitation, this one, there is progress. But the point is, because of the delays, we are now required to pay to the contractor the total sum of 34.9 million US dollar because we delayed. So the contractor says, you delayed here and here, pay me money. Even this one, although progressing, it was never delivered on time. The Bukasa project port, this one hasn't started at all, still in the preliminary. Kampala flyover construction, finance says it has stagnated. Kampala City Roads rehabilitation, they are now revising it. The time elapsed, they are revising it. And you know each revision comes with money. Multinational Kapchorwa, Suyam Kitare and Eldoret bypass. This one has almost been completed, but after a delay. Change Johoima Masindi Chigumba Road. The project have not been completed, more money is needed. National Lake Victoria Maritime Communication Transport Project. Here, overall progress is from 37 to by the end of April. So all these projects, they have delayed, no counter funding, they are contracting more. Ruwero Butarang Road. Work is at 67%. A road that they started nearly 10 years ago, they haven't completed. Short stretch. Moyo, Yumbe, Koboko Road project. And you keep asking, why does the president repeat these roads in every budget? The progress, as you have seen, on some projects, it is 0. So every year he repeats, you think government is working. Namagunga Budadiri Narugugu Road project. The progress of the project was at 4% against the planned 4.3. This one is still in infancy. The Northeastern Road Corridor Asset Management Project. Maybe I don't have to read each and every project that is here. But you need members to interact with these projects. And I am saying in this minority report, as I try to conclude, that we borrow money to do projects for which we pay a lot of money in interest, and we never complete this work. Part of the reason, no counter funding. Anyone who's sensible, you will not be contracting more loans when you don't have counter funding to finish the ones that you have undertaken. You will see there is one here for private sector, think I will stop with that one, which is Project 22. Investment for Industrial Transformation and Employment Project. The investment for Industrial Transformation and Employment is a collaborative program between the Government of Uganda, represented by Minister of Finance, Bank of Uganda, private sector, and the development partners. So this project borrowed 218 million US dollar. The idea was that the project starts in 2022 and ends in 2027. However, due to delays in approval, the project effectiveness date was 13th November 2023 and the closing date is 31st January 2027. The project stagnated, targeted to benefit 140,000 medium, small, and macro enterprises and 120,000 refugees. Of these, at least 40,000 expected to be women-led macro enterprises. The larger-sized firms also benefit from the intervention. The overall project performance was poor at approximately 0.3% and significantly behind schedule. Even where you want to borrow money to help companies that are employing people, you don't utilize it. And then you come to Parliament, you say, can we borrow more? I don't know, maybe the Honorable Musasizi enjoys the word borrowing. So if he ever brings a report that doesn't have the word borrowing, you will feel very bad. You have electricity access scale-up project, same problem. Upgrade of health centers, 2 to 3, same problem, behind schedule. Uganda Secondary Education Expansion Project, money borrowed, project not making progress. I am saying in this report, don't allow them to borrow until they have completed and made progress on these ones, or else you'll just be enlarging the list. You borrow money, you pay. When you are looking at the report on loans, you will discover we pay commitment fees on money unutilized, which money we need to do other things that are being listed here.
Ssemujju, can you read the report?
If I read the report, I will delay because now I am concluding. If you want, Mr. Speaker, I can read the report.
If you had read
it, I will delay. I am concluding now. I am on page 15, which is the last one, on rate of employment and unemployment. The committee notes that actually this information is not given, yet is a requirement by the law. One of the economic variables, the budget framework paper is supposed to address the rate of employment and unemployment in the country. This is what Schedule 3 of the law demands. Without providing any basis, the Minister of Finance states on page 16 of the framework paper that one of the macroeconomic objectives of government next financial year is to increase the stock of new jobs to about 800,000. The figure of how many jobs they created this or last year is not given, just throwing figures around. The target of government in the NDP3 was to create 512,000 jobs annually. Like other NRM targets, this was never made. Maybe they have only met the one of staying in power. National Planning Authority in Empowerment and Skills Status Report 2022 reported that the yearly net job creation averaged 320,000 against a target of 500,000. This is too little considering that every year 700,000 Ugandans join the job market. If you look at the figures of PAYE and NSSF, there are just about 2.5 million formal jobs, which keep fluctuating. The public sector, as you are aware, employs just 400,000, and the rest are in private sector. National Planning Authority estimates 15.8 million to be of the working age, and 13 million of these are in the private sector. The UBO census report puts the figure of the working age going by the labor policy of 2011 to about 24 million. The planning also says the quality of jobs in Uganda remains low, with 78% of the labor force engaged in vulnerable employment characterized with low pay and job insecurity. Uganda, according to NPA and World Bank reports, has the lowest business survival rate in the world. Only 1 out of the 4 farms remain operational after the first years of existence. This is what budget must address, but it is being mentioned in passing in the usual NRM business as usual casual manner. Younger people need jobs, and you cannot respond to this demand by violence and prison. Hundreds demanding equality life have been brutalized and imprisoned during this electoral period. Mr. Speaker, you know Sam Mugumya. We've been told he is being held by the army, very sick. Maybe you're not even sure if he has not died. So this is the response of the NRM. When people are demanding for work, prison. The NPA notes that while official figures show that unemployment reduced from 11 to 9 and 8.8%, in absolute terms, unemployment persists as a result of many Ugandans engaged in vulnerable employment, which is often characterized by low productivity. That's why our girls mainly are being trafficked to Middle East to work as housemaids. The boys who remain here are being marched to Luzira, Chitaria, and Kigo for disturbing the judges. The World Bank, in its July 2025 Human Capital Development and Growth Review, says Uganda is failing to harness 61% of its human capital for socio-economic development. Mr. Speaker, I am only emphasizing information which the Honorable Mr. Asizi has given, and I thank him, which the committee has given, but they are shying away. They are saying, you, regardless of the non-compliance, please approve the framework paper. These are the dangers that you face. I ask you, honorable members, to reject this framework paper. They go and do it. First, to comply with the law, and secondly, to comply with common sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would like to appreciate the majority committee of the budget and the other sectoral committees for the deeper analysis they have done on our budget framework paper. I also wish to thank Honorable Ssemujju, the Shadow Minister of Finance, for strengthening and emphasizing some of the points which we made in our report. Mr. Speaker, it is true that our public debt is projected to go beyond 50% minimum target. But Mr. Speaker, this is not the problem. Why? Because our numbers continue to show that our debt obligations are manageable now and also in the long term. We have not failed to pay on any commitment as and when it falls due. Mr. Speaker, on debt, the focus of all of us should be, what are we borrowing for? If we are borrowing to invest in the economy, there is no problem. If we are borrowing to grow our GDP, there is no problem. It becomes a problem when we are borrowing for luxury. That is the borrowing we should all be concerned about. Mr. Speaker, on the GDP numbers, our source of information is UBOS. And what UBOS gives us, Mr. Speaker, we should trust the authorities we put in charge of some of these numbers. So if we come here and begin questioning the numbers UBOS has given us on GDP, then which other authority would we rely on? Mr. Speaker, also on the debt numbers, our difference with BOU is mainly on the timing. Whereas for us, we report as per June, sometimes BOU captures as per December. And this creates the small variance you see Like now you are seeing 116 by us and 124 by BOU. If we go into June of 2026, you will see our number capturing what BOU has captured. Mr. Speaker, the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility is our guiding tool, together with the NDP and also the manifesto. However, Mr. Speaker, consistency does not mean exact. Consistency means whatever you are doing should be close to the what? To the guiding principles. Mr. Speaker, when you deviate from the charter this year, as long as you commit that within a certain period, you will come back to the charter, this explanation is acceptable. Therefore, my friend, Honorable Ssemujju, I wish to invite you to look at these things squarely. We have been together in this. I'm going to miss you because you have been helping me in keeping me awake. Because sometimes you go deeper to invite me to do a deeper analysis of some of these things. But also I invite you to let's always look at these matters squarely. And maybe lastly, on the projects. Yes, we have a number of projects which we have borrowed for and have not taken off. But where have we come from? In 2012, the situation which was there, some of you, my colleagues who have been here with us, you know that we would borrow for a project even when there is no appraisal or feasibility study being done. You find the Parliament approving funding for a project where no process has taken place. But now, Mr. Speaker, I wish to inform the House that for a project now to come here, it must pass through our PIMS process. And we are now saying that where there is no money for counterpart funding, no, I am not accusing Parliament. I am accusing both of us. Yes, I'm not accusing Parliament. I am saying this previously used to happen. But for now, what have we done? We have subjected up serious approvals, rigorous approvals, PIMS process, and also for the project to succeed, we must confirm that there is counterpart funding in the budget. And this is why you see, I'm sure, colleagues, most of our stakeholders come to lobby you. Why is our project not moving? Why is this, that? There is now serious restrictions. And going forward, Mr. Speaker, I commit that this weakness of delayed projects will not continue happening. I want to use this example of Busegampigi. Busegampigi, this is one of the projects I found in the ministry. When the borrowing had been done, you borrow, you approve a request for borrowing, no feasibility study has been done, nobody has even gone on ground to assess where the road is going to pass. And by the time we go on ground, we find that the cost which was initially borrowed is not even half of what is required. You ideally need another amount amounting to 100% or so.
Maybe, Honorable Minister, just clarification. Because I was part of the National Economy Committee when we approved that loan. We went on the ground. We saw, okay, where the road was going to pass. The ministry, I remember the committee was chaired by the Honorable Asiibula. It was really, I want to absolve myself. If your government didn't do your part, and I want to tell you where the problem came from. And you told us as government that we shall be having around 14 kilometers of swamp, and we are going to build above the swamp, because we were concerned on environmental degradation. I think I had Honorable Alex Biarugawa, Honorable Rico, Honorable Cooper, who are all members of that committee. And we asked very many difficult questions. They presented a feasibility study. Engineer Patrick Mreme presented a full design. And we spent days, and we had a robust debate here, because Honorable Katuntu, I remember when he was talking about the cost of the road. Now, the problem came when they reached in UNRA and changed the design. They changed the design and now decided to backfill the swamp. Okay? They changed the design to backfill the swamp. They had told us in the design, they had included in the design connecting to the Entebbe Expressway and the bypass. In the design they gave the contractor, there was no connection to the expressway. So what is very important, Honourable Minister, why I brought out this, it is very important for you to inform government agencies that what you bring to Parliament and is approved should be what is implemented. Otherwise, the project ended up costing more than double. Yeah, so I just wanted that to go on record. Otherwise, I couldn't sit on a committee that would approve a road where there was no feasibility study.
Thank you very much, Mr. Memory. However, we have struggled to correct those past mistakes. No, there is nothing. The Speaker was enhancing my submission. So, Mr. Speaker, I wish to inform the House that all these mistakes have been corrected, and now we are at the point of starting. We are at the point of takeoff. The Busegampiji project is now going to take off. Mr. Speaker, I think I have tried to honor the unemployment rate. Yes, this is a big concern to all of us as Ugandans and representatives of the people. But the question of focus should be, where are these jobs? The jobs are mainly in the ATMs. And when you look at the priorities I highlighted in my motion, I am requesting Parliament to appropriate money in these key areas which bring jobs to the people of Uganda. I think this is what we should really be concerned most about. Mr. Speaker, I submit.
Thank you. So, honorable colleagues, we are going to take on counterpart funding. Because the Committee on National Economy always gets the commitment in writing, but the money is not in. So I think when we are scrutinizing the budget, Honorable Chair for Budget, we shall need to focus much on counterpart funding, but also completion of the loans, of the projects. And maybe, Honorable Minister, the issue of acquisition of land before taking off of these projects. Because it's a very big concern. Someone is given, they commence the project when land is not available. Someone says, I mobilized it, I need $30 million. My equipment was idle. I think you need to be much, much stronger on that. Otherwise, honorable colleagues, I want to guide our debate because the budget framework paper is not about the road that is not in your constituency. It's not about the classroom that has not yet been finished. No, it's linking national development objectives to the budget, to the proposed expenditure in a national framework manner, not just your constituency. And the moment we take that route, it will be much, much easier. And maybe, Chairman, budget, I don't know how we shall narrow down, because everything that was captured when I was reading through the report, you'll find we have nearly over 200 trillion of unfunded priorities, over 200 trillion. So we are throwing what the agencies had thrown at the ministry, and the ministry said my resource envelope is 69 trillion, and we are again throwing it back on. So I think you need to guide the committee that we reduce at this level, DFP.